Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for being here and weathering this storm. We are in the safest place in the world. Mickey and Minnie, well, Minnie, will protect us. So I'm really excited. Margot, I'm really excited. Margot and I just met about 5 minutes ago. We've become close friends already. Everybody else is dead to us. And it's just great. Margot is from Ireland. I am from Brooklyn, New York. Our accent, boy, thank you. Our accents will be competing. I am sure I will be the more difficult one to hear. And so I thought this morning I'd talk a little bit about my coming out story, and I always have to have my notes with me, first time with an iPad, how interesting. And also talk about some women mentors that I've had. You know, in my coming out story, in college and in graduate school, I became very involved with the church, and I decided to pursue a career as a Presbyterian minister to make change in the world. Oh, no, Celeste, that's your coming out story. It's so much more impressive than mine. Do you mind me doing yours? It is just the most amazing story. And by hearing Celeste's story, you know, when I was at Out and Equal last year, it was my first time being at the summit. And I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away. I was blown away because it was, first of all, so well organized, but I learned so much, and I met so many wonderful people, and I just felt like, oh my goodness, I've got to see if I can get involved, and there was a little Hillary thing, get involved and get on the board, and I was lucky enough to have a dinner with Celeste, and I just could not believe from the ground what she created in 20 years and over that time frame. So I feel very blessed to be on the board, and I thank you for your sisterhood, and I'm really excited. So I've been out in the workplace about 20 years, and I decided I've been with my wife almost 25 years. I'm very lucky she married me. Well, since we have time, I'll tell you a quick story about marriage. So we got married when it was legal in New York, and we have 2 kids. Our son is 17, my daughter is 10. So I always say we're old women with young children, so it's got to work. And I had asked her every time there was a state that we could get married in, I'd say, why don't you please marry me? Let's go get married in that state. And she'd say, no, honey, not until it's legal in New York. And then when it was legal in New York, she called me up, where was she? But she called me up and she said, it's gonna pass this weekend, let's get married. I said, no, I kind of want to think about it now. Push me around. So 20 years ago it did come out, and because we were gonna have our first baby. And everybody thought Jerry was my roommate. Because we lived together and because we had 1 bedroom. And when I decided to do this, it was a lot of stress because Jerry had always been out in her workplace, and the fact that I wasn't out was really something we talked about, and she felt that I would feel better. I just feel better, and I'd feel more creative and more relaxed and better use of pronouns if I came out. And when we were having a child, I thought, I can't be mama at home and nobody in the workplace. And actually, for the whole time before we had our son, I thought maybe I wouldn't be called mama, mommy. I mean, is that strange? And maybe I'll be called Dee Dee. You know, it's what my brother used to call me, and he still calls me that. And then when my son was born, I'm like, oh no, I am mama. That's the way that's going to work. And so the first order of business was I went to my boss. And I sat down with him, and everybody knew Jerry, right, because she was my roommate. And I said to him, Jerry and I are going to have a baby, and I want you to know that she's my life partner. And I also want you to know we live in a kind of weird world where I cannot adopt my own child, right? Jerry was having the baby. At the time, I would have had to adopt her. It was very confusing. And I said, and it's also important for you to know that I have kind of sort of no rights. And so if I die, Jerry's entitled to nothing, and my baby's entitled to nothing. So I'm going to rely upon you that in the event of my death, you will make sure that she gets what I would get, my stock, my 401k, and everything else. And I want to remind you, I am Italian. Right, sister? Better yet, I hope this doesn't change our relationship, you and me, but I'm going to say something you don't know yet. I'm Sicilian. And so, the horse in the head, the horse in the bed means nothing to me. I will haunt you from the grave if you don't take care of my wife and my child. And I have said that story to every boss I've had since that point, and in a very, very serious way, because I wanted my wife and now 2 children to be protected. And there's a lot of reliance when you ask somebody to do that, so serious discussion. But then I went and I talked to my senior staff, and I called them in one by one, and I said, you know, I just want to let you know I'm very excited. Since we work closely together, I wanted to share with you that Jerry and I are having a baby. And I got a couple of nods, and I got a couple of but nobody threw anything at me, and it was all good. And I went home that night, and I could still feel, 20 years later, the absolute relief in my body. It's done. I'm done coming out. Oh no. You have to keep coming out over and over and over again. I honestly and seriously didn't realize that. And so I thought, well, okay, if I have to do this over and over again, it still was a matter of thinking about it and assessing it. Should I do it? Do I want to do it? Does it need to be said? And so did I feel safe saying it? And one of the saddest decisions I ever made was while I was at Citigroup. Oh, and am I not supposed to say we're a big bank? I was at a big bank for 32 years. I was just sharing with Margot that I started in that big bank when I was 17 and a half, and on my 18th birthday, I had my first martini, and my second martini, and my third martini. And I retired from that big company to go to another big company, JPMorgan Chase, when I was 50 years old, and now I'm at First Data, where I am, again, young. And so one of the saddest decisions truly was when I was appointed to the management committee, and the CEO was going to have an off-site, and he invited, in a letter, he invited us and our partners. And I thought, well, that is a very purposeful word, partners. So he really means we should bring our partners. And so I asked somebody who was close to me, well, what do you think? And she says, I think it doesn't mean partners. And I think you would be the very first person in the universe, in this company, to do this. And I thought, do I want to be the first person in this company of 275,000 people to do this? And I thought, no. Because I was in my early 30s, I was unbelievably blessed to be on the management committee of a Fortune 100 company. And so I didn't tell my wife because she wouldn't be expected to be invited anyhow. And in the most recent years, I told this story to somebody in front of my wife, figuring I told her. Yes, you're feeling my pain. I do believe firmly that I tell my wife everything. And so, I'm resolute in that. And so she said, I never heard that story. And I was embarrassed because I had an opportunity. And if I could go back and do it differently, I would. So fast, but you know, I think I would. Let me say that. So fast forward, a few months ago, I had dinner with a business dinner with some women from a bank in South Dakota. And we had a dinner the evening before a meeting, and we were chatting and getting along and enjoying ourselves. And she said, you know, I'm very excited, Cindy. We're starting our first women's council. I said, oh my gosh, that is awesome. And we started to talk about it, and we chatted about it, and we're getting all loose, and we had a scotch, and she had we were good. And then I said, what about an LGBT council? And she said, I'm a Christian. And I said, oh, no worries, I'm a lesbian. It's all good. And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and we laughed hysterically. And the next day, I gave her a lot of LGBT swag. I gave her a book. I gave her a pen. I gave her a banner. She was set. She was set. True story. No enhancement in that story, not even a little. And she wrote me a thank you note. And so I don't think they have an LGBT committee yet, but we'll get there. We'll get there. And so that was great. So I still assess whether or not to come out. Even at 55, I still think about it. Does it need to be said? Is it safe? How do I feel about it? And I joked last year at the summit that there were 2 places in the world that I had been that I didn't come out. One was Texas. Well, it was Texas. And one was India. And so last year at the summit, we had it in Texas. Thank you, Celise. I now crossed that off my list. Next year in India. So on the diversity front, even though I've been out for 20 years, I have to tell you for the first 18, I did not really actively participate in LGBT ERGs. If I was asked to do a panel, I definitely did it. If I was asked to do a keynote speech, I definitely did it. But I didn't actually do anything to make a difference. But I thought I did, because like, oh, I'm doing what you asked me to do, but I wasn't actually doing anything to make a difference. And so when I joined my company, First Data, payment processing and helping all merchants build their own businesses. When I joined First Data 2.5 years ago, my boss, who's the chairman and CEO, who I know for 20 years, said he was passionate about creating a diverse and inclusive workforce. And I'll say this, he said, Cindy, there were 5 white guys on the board, we gotta change this, right? And he did. And in my announcement, he wrote that in addition to my role, I would establish an LGBT council, an LGBT group. And that was really wonderful. And then I started to get phone calls from folks and saying, I'd like to help. And I thought, wow, that's really cool, because people said they had never seen anything like that at First Data. At that point, we had no ERGs 2.5 years ago, no ERGs. Today, Karen Whalen, how many we have? 9? I can't see that. 8 ERGs. 8 ERGs. The LGBT one is the best, and it's called Unity. And so it's 2 weeks. I started in May of 2014. I told you I talk a lot, Margo. I'm so sorry. Khaki. I started in May of 2014, and it was 2 weeks before New York Pride, and my wife and I were driving, and she said to me, so what are you going to do for Pride? And I said, I don't know, babe, what do you want to do for Pride? She goes, no. Aren't you supposed to be running an LGBT group? And I said, yeah. She goes, Pride's in 2 weeks. I said, but I just started. She goes, seriously, Cindy, what does that have to do with anything? Now you know why I married her. And so I immediately called my nephew, who's a graphic artist, and I said, please help me put some, make 2 posters up. Make 2 posters up. And we came up with such a beautiful poster, and you'll see it in the room where all the groups are set up. And I said to people, okay, we're going to take these posters, we're going to plaster the joint. We're going to have them up, We're diverse, we're united, we're proud, we're First Data. We're going to be in rainbow colors, it's fabulous. We're going to have a letter from the CEO, and good people, great people said, not going to happen. That's not what we do at First Data. And I went, oh yeah, it's going to happen. And I went into my boss and I said, you like this one, you like that one? He goes, I like this one, and it happened. And so thank you for doing that. And so I'm almost done, I'm so sorry. So since that time, in 2.5 years, some notable accomplishments. As Shar said, we went from 46 to 100. I'm sorry, Shar, can I correct you? In 4 months. Why did we go from 46 to 100 in 4 months? Because for goodness sakes, my friends, it's an open book test. HRC actually tells you what to do to get 100. HRC tells you what to do to get 100. I like to pass open book tests. And so we did, and it was the team who really did that together, and we included gender identity and, in our language and domestic partnership coverage and benefits for their children, and we implemented transgendered benefits. We have also been recognized for 2 years in a row as one of the top 25 notable companies by Diversity Inc., and that's very exciting. And with the guidance and inspiration of Out and Equal, we developed detailed training on policies on how to transition in the workplace, and they are detailed. I'm talking about like, all right, here's how you transition in the workplace, and here's what people can do and can't do. You can't say to somebody, no, you can't come into this bathroom. You can't look over a stool, you can't look under a stool. We are very detailed, because if you expect change to happen, you got to tell people what that change is. And that was because of Out and Equal. And then finally, well, many other things, but we put in an ally pledge. And I learned that from Out and Equal. And interestingly enough, only about 2 months before I came to Summit, a woman came up to me who had been in the company almost 30 years. And she said, Cindy, I'm so excited, I just came out. I've been here almost 30 years. I came out about a month ago. I'm so relieved. I feel so great. I feel so energetic. And my wife is so much happier at home. But more importantly, when I see somebody from First Data on the street, and I'm with her, I don't pretend I don't know her anymore. And that was very powerful. And I took that story to the full board of directors, and through Out and Equal's guidance, we put together an ally pledge, which basically says equality. The full board of directors signed it. The management committee signed it. We now have over 2,100 signatures in a company of 24,000. That is wonderful. Thank you for that. And so let me say that we have 7 chapters in Unity, and that although I'm the executive sponsor and I feel blessed and energized and fulfilled in my soul by the work that we do, the real inspiration comes from our leads, Karen Whalen and Christian Sofiel, who are here, and I thank them very much. They are real mentors to me and to the Unity group. And talking about women mentors, I've had many women mentors in my career, since this is a women's breakfast, and 2 of them I'll bring to mind. One was Joan Guggenheimer, who is the general counsel at Citigroup and the general counsel at JP Morgan Chase. The most amazing, insightful, brilliant woman. And she would just say to me, I'm just Joni from Queens. And she just kept it very basic. And what she taught me was just to keep it simple, know your facts, find your voice, and speak. And two things I'll tell you. One was, I was 40 years old before I started to carry a pocketbook. 40 years old. I had everything in my pants pockets. I had, you know, my keys, I had my money, I had my cell phone, that was 15 years ago. I had my BlackBerry. If it was that time of the month, I had other stuff. I had all of this stuff. Sorry, men. Get to your inner femininity. All of this stuff in my pocket. And I go out and I get a pocketbook, and somebody takes me out, and it was a lovely, very expensive, I never spent that much money on a pocketbook again, Suarez bag, and it had a latch and a latch and a strap and a strap and a this and a that, and it was fabulous. And I went into Joni, I said, Joni, look, I don't have all this stuff in my my pants anymore. Look at this. And she said, Cindy, if you want to get your cell phone or your BlackBerry, what are you going to do? And I go, we do a latch, a strap, and a latch, and a strap, and everything. And she picked up, no story in hand, so she picked up her bag, and outside there were 2 pockets, one for a BlackBerry, one for her cell phone. She said, $30, J. Crew. Keeping it real. And then when she decided to start a women's council at Citigroup, I did a bunch of writing. Okay, these are all the things we're going to do. This is what's going to happen. And I got a muffin for her, and I got a muffin for me, and we sat down over our muffins. There's a joke in there somewhere. We sat down. No, Betty White would talk about that, right? So we sat down, and this is not taped, is it? Cut that part out. We sat down, and she was eating, and I was telling her my story, and she looked at me and said, just do it, Cindy. And that really made a difference to me, because it really was just like, okay, you've done your work, you've talked about it, you found your voice, now just go do it. And that's what she taught me. And Joni's gone now. She passed away 10 years ago at the age I am right now. She was my boss, my friend, my mentor, my sister, and I love her. Thank you, Joni, for all your guidance. My second mentor is a woman who's been working for me, I swear it's the last thing I'm going to say, for 20 years, Carmen Menendez-Porto. And Carmen embodies all of those guiding principles that Joni taught me. And when I have a problem and I try to work it out, I pitch it to Carmen. And you know what Carmen says to me? Cindy, when you convince me, you'll be able to convince everybody. She helps me keep it real. So, since we're at a women's leadership breakfast, and I like to do quotes, I'm going to end with a quote. Can you believe I'm ending? I'm going to end with a quote from former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. There is a special place in hell for women who don't help women, so let's help each other. Thank you very much.
Hi, ladies. I'm curious as to your experiences. I think it's, once you've come out at work, you get some support. How have both of you obviously deal with customers? How have your experiences been with people asking about your personal life when you're with a customer?
I'll quickly answer my part. I guess it surprises me that it keeps happening, because I think, I don't know, but I think I look gay, and I think everybody knows. And when you're in a small pond, everybody in Ireland seems to be, I'm probably the most out lesbian, so I'm thinking, how can anyone not know? And then people say to me, oh, you're married? And I say, yeah. And then they say, what does your husband do? And I'm going, gee. Anyhow, so I just straight away say I'm gay, I'm a lesbian. I come out and say, and generally, actually 100% people have been great. And surprisingly, they've ended up being people that I've had much deeper conversations with, because it's more authentic. And so I guess I think it's a leveler, and it's much better to be that way.
Not only do I think everybody thinks I'm gay, I think everybody's Italian. So it's kind of, you're Italian, I'm just letting you know. It's very interesting. When asked, I definitely do come out, because I just feel at this age, I just can't not. And I agree completely with Margot, although I have a feeling I agree with Margot on everything, is that you really do deepen the relationship. So even the story I told about that woman from a bank in, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, I'm a Christian. Well, I'm a lesbian. I'm not kidding. We have built a bond together because it was just that simple. It just came out that easily. And I think that's how you build the relationship. So definitely when asked, I come out, and sometimes I come out when not asked, because I just want to kind of sort of talk about my fabulous children and my delicious wife.
Thanks very much for your comments this morning. I'm really interested that you talked about the roles of being a mentor and the mentors in your work. Tell us about now, as you're more senior leaders in your business, if you're being asked to be a mentor, and about those experiences. Particularly if younger LGBT, either employees or colleagues, and what you do as a mentor to those individuals.
So I'm often asked to be a mentor to folks, and anytime I'm asked, I say yes. That's first and foremost. And mostly, I just, it depends on the age of the person. I mean, people who are in their 20s just are thinking differently. And so they mentor me, actually. So they look for mentorship from me, but they're actually mentoring me, and I learn so much and think differently about the world. And for others, I just really talk about the freedom. When you talk about what was that difficult first step, in coming out and how you did it. And then once it was done, the kind of the freedom and how your world changed. And I give as many examples of that as possible. We have a woman, the woman I talked about at work who had been there almost 30 years who came out. She's now on the board. She literally came out less than a year ago. She's now on the board of the AGLCC, so that's the Atlanta Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. I mean, she's out, baby. And it's just that freedom to be who you are and allow that creativity. When you give examples of that, the courage starts to build and the confidence starts to build.
I guess very similar for me. When I'm asked to mentor somebody, I say yes, if at all possible. I'm mentoring 7 women entrepreneurs, and I'm mentoring a couple of young people as well around LGBT. And one of those young men that I'm mentoring, Thomas, his name is 24, he's from Kerry in Ireland, again very rural, and he's already in his 2nd career, and he's just amazing. And what I'm seeing, I guess, with the young people that I'm mentoring and that I'm supporting is, there'll be no stopping them. They're going to be fantastic, and I think that's wonderful. I want them not to have the wasted years and the wasted opportunities. But I guess I think it's incredibly important to mentor, to support, and I see it as my duty to kind of pay it forward that way.
There's a question now.
Thank you both for a little mini episode of Cameron and Rhea earlier. That was awesome. Shout out to all the girls who love girls as well, who got that joke. I was wondering if you could share some advice on, in my company, we have we call it an opportunity, on getting women and men in the same room together within our LGBT resource group. I don't know if anybody else has that similar experience, but we struggle to get the ladies to show up if they think a single man is going to be in the room.
I guess I've not found that in my own company and work. So organisationally, I've not found it, but I've found it particularly in volunteer organisations, NGOs. There tends to be the men's ones and the women's ones, and we don't mix. So one of the things I've done in that respect is I've gone out and personally had the conversation with people. I've had to tap the people I know, and sorry, my language might be a different interpretation here, but sort of tap somebody on the shoulder and say, listen, really could do with you getting involved. Can you come and support? And that's been the instigator for change. So in our Glen board, I was the only woman at one stage. Now we're 4, and they literally have all come from personal conversations. And the more that are coming, then obviously they've got a duty to do the same. And that's been my experience.
I agree. I've not had that experience. I was thinking of a lesbian mixer to get things started, but I've not had that experience. But I do think Margot really hit the nail on the head. When people don't show up, sometimes you really need to get to the root of why they're not showing up, and you have to ask them in a very open and engaging way, so they tell you. We're having these LGBT events or meetings. We really need the voices of the lesbians in the group, or we really need the voices of the allies, or the transgendered, or the bisexuals, or whomever, or allies, right? Our 2 leads are allies. And we need your voice, and we need your experience, but we're not seeing folks show up. Can you give me some insight as to what we could do differently to attract that? And then as they speak, towards the end, you just say, we need your leadership. Would you come to the next meeting with me and help? And so I think it'll chip away little by little, but I think it's a great question and an important question about how do you bring people into the fold. And thank you for doing that work.
We have one more quick question, and then we want to get you back, so.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ellie Okelberg. I'm a welding engineer at Chevron, and I live and work in Mississippi. So my question is, how would you adapt to having such a supportive company, but without that local support, without a local LGBT, without a local support system in the community?
So you're saying the company is supportive, but there isn't a local support?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's another great question. Chapters are so important. When we put our, and I think many firms do this, when they put their LGBT groups together or their women's councils or others, they look for chapters. And what we try to do is build a single chapter, make that single chapter successful, and then kind of remodel that. People like to be around things that are exciting and successful, but also people like to do a lot of social justice work in their community, because I don't know what the challenges are and the needs are as well as anybody who's in the community. So one of the things is usually HR is really terrific in helping build a chapter or helping you create that chapter there. And it always starts off small, and it could be a picnic or it could be something simple. Never has to cost a lot of money. The creative stuff people do on $50 is amazing. And just start to bring people together and just start to have the conversation, and it does take off. So that's how I would think about it.
Yeah, and I guess different environment for me, but when I look at when we're trying to do things in UK or Ireland or Central Europe around trying to, and particularly when we're more isolated spaces, we work very much with our NGOs, even if they're not LGBT NGOs, but NGOs who are sympathetic to things we're trying to do and try to understand what strands and web of influence they've got in the local community. And out of that sometimes comes those, interesting connections. And those connections can help at least form a barrier of support and be there. So I think kind of maybe deepen the search, maybe a little bit might be worth looking at. And I go back to, again, the Irish part, because it was a very, isolated thing. It's amazing when you have conversations. One of the things we had to do around the time of the referendum was we were urging people to have conversations with their neighbours, their friends and their families. And it's amazing those conversations that got wider and wider and wider, just how you found that people you didn't think were kindred spirits actually were. And even if they didn't agree 100%, you'd usually get 60 or 70%, and that's still warming versus the negative of that. So I think there's a kind of couple of different strands to look to, and we'll all help and support in any way we can. And I mean, certainly organisations like Out and Equal will certainly, I think, be able to give you some of those supports.
Well, listen, I want to ask you to one more time thank these two powerful women for these stories.